Hey guys, welcome back to the shack. Tonight we're going to be doing a little experimenting, and the question has always been to me, which machine does the best job on slate? And what kind of power settings should I run with, fill in the blank machine to get good results with slate? So I'm getting ready for Christmas, getting ready for some events, and I wanted to go ahead and make that determination of which machine will I be using to do my slate stuff in the coming up season, because as you know guys, I have the CO2, I've got the diodes as well as the fiber. So I kind of wanted to know the answer too. So if you've asked yourself that question, stick around and we're going to try to get you some answers. All right guys, so as many of you know, I have a Monport 40 watt CO2 that I use. So for anything that I'm, referencing a CO2 or my CO2, keep in mind that's the machine that I've got. Okay, so I started off because I actually figured the CO2 would be a good machine for doing slate. I have managed to fix myself a way of jigging stuff out in there. I've got jig panels that I can now place in there and know exactly where it's going to be. That's made it a lot easier to use a Monport for jobs. It's a lot easier than having to try to frame and all that. And I'll share that with you in a later video if you're interested. But I was kind of leaning toward the Monport, being a CO2, it'd be a little faster. It's a small work area, so that way I can just load 3 or 4 of them in there, hit it and go and move on. But let's face it guys, I've been using diodes for a long time and I've seen some really good results with diodes on slate as well. Especially now that I've gotten into the 30 watt range instead of the 20s or the 10s like I've shown you before. I felt like it was time to, reevaluate which machine I use for slate. But then there was the fiber, because I'm like, the fiber does metal. It does a great job on metal. Slate's kind of a rock, which is a mineral. So I was like, hey, we'll try that too. So that's what I've been doing. I spent like last night testing different settings, doing speed and power tests on slate. So if slate's something that you use a lot of and you have one of these 3 machines, this might be helpful to you. But we're going to start out, guys. I want to show you the results. I'm going to lay the rest of these down so I don't drop them, because that would be devastating. So I'm going to start out with the Monport. This is the Monport. This is the M40 from Monport. This is the first test that I did. And it's the only machine, guys. Let me get my little pointer here so I can show you. So you ain't gotta look at my finger. You can look at the pointer. This is the only machine that I got this like raised, the real slow speeds. I got this little real raised finish right here. It's almost like a gold finish. Now, I will say it's an interesting finish because it almost looks like it took the slate, and I don't know if you can see the sparkles or not, but it's like it got it hot enough that has basically turned it into glass. If you move it just right, you can see some kind of crystalline structure in there, and it's really, really reflective, and it's really coarse. I mean, this would almost work for sandpaper, guys. I mean, it will sand the end off of my little stick here. So, not sure how I managed to get that result, but at 10 millimeters a second, 100% output, that's the range that I saw that. Now, that wasn't really the look that I was going for, although I thought it was cool. So I continued up the scale. And as you can see, the CO2 kind of faded out up in the higher ranges around 300 millimeters per second. But that was when I found out, guys, that part of my problem with my Monport was they had it throttled on the controller. It was only doing 8,000 millimeters a second, which roughly dictates to I think around 130 millimeters a second. So this was skewed. So I redid the test. All right. The second test that I did, this is with the Monport as well. I did adjust the focus, confirmed that my focus was correct. After doing the first test, I found that my focus was a little bit low. So that may account for that burn pattern. So if you're trying to replicate that at those speeds, guys, drop your focus down. I'm going to say probably 2 millimeters. Because what I had done was I was cutting a jig for the coasters. And so I cut the jig for the coasters and then put the coasters in there. But they were the thickness of these little rubber things taller than the wood that I was focused on. So If you're trying to replicate that rough finish, drop down about 2 millimeters on your focus and run that power set, and you should get similar results with a 40 watt CO2. So after I fixed the focus and went into the controller, I adjusted my MON port so it'd go a little faster. That was something I had overlooked, apparently. This is the results that I got with the MON port. So as you can see, I'm still getting more of a gold finish with the CO2. I'm not sure exactly why that's happening, but there's probably a scientific explanation for why the MON port's power speed test looks a little more gold than the others. But they're similar. They're similar. But to me, the MON port looks like it's got a little more gold in it. That's going to be the MON port over here. This is a diode. So I wound up, felt like I got some pretty good settings on that. So moving forward with the MON port, we're looking at, I think this is kind of where I want to land right here, around 140 millimeters a second. I can't show you and look at the same time. So around 100% power and 140 millimeters per second, I think is where I would land with the MON port. So moving forward toward Christmas, if I'm doing some of these, especially if I have my diode machines tied up, then I now have my settings for the MON port, and it might wind up being the one that I use to do these. But moving on. So the next machine that I have currently is I have the ASMR P2 in the enclosure. And I did the same exact speed and power test with the ASMR as I did with the CO2. And as you can see, I got a lot more color. It didn't power down and not mark. I mean, all the way up to 300 millimeters a second, all the way out to 100% power. I'm still getting really good marking. Now, if you look down here in the 100 millimeters a second, 100% power, there's a little bit of that shine, a little bit of that crystalline substance or whatever it is was trying to form there, but it didn't do it as bad as it did with the CO2. So with the ASMR, I'm going to be honest with you, I think my color that I would land on would be somewhere up around here, 300 millimeters a second at 100% output. That gives you a nice, just well-defined, high contrasting color that's not got a lot of the yellows or the golds in it as the other test did. So that was pretty interesting. Now, I tried the exact same test on the fiber, and of course the fiber is a whole nother animal, okay? You've got frequency comes into play. The speeds are not really comparable to the diodes because of the way it works, but I went ahead and I did it anyway. And so this is the results I got. More of a gold color. It's getting a lot of those golds coming out. And as you can see, it's pretty much, I mean, every layer, every cut turned out being basically the same thing. So that test did not work for the COM marker. All right, so I had to come up with a way of determining with the COM marker how to change the effects on slate. And guys, it turns out that rather than speed and power, which aren't really that critical with the fiber, it's all about the frequency. So with the frequency, I did manage to go from that lighter color with low contrast over to a higher contrast color. Now, that is because this is the 60 all the way over to 20. And I do know that from testing with metal and other materials that 20 typically does more of a dig into the material, where up around 60 or so, it's more of a polishing action. So I believe that's what's going on here, is I'm just getting a deeper cut out of it. But guys, out of all the machines that I tested, the CO2, the diode, and the fiber, y'all want to guess which one I like the best? So I'm going to show you these three, and you can kind of think to yourself which one you think looks best, and try to determine, you know, which one you like best there. That's each machine, guys, right there. All right, and my favorite is this one, and it was done on the diode. I've got a little more contrast, even with selecting the power setting that I wanted. This one's got a little better contrast as far as the silver color, whereas with CO2, I managed to get some decent contrast. But if you look at these two side by side, it's not a lot of difference. So if you have a CO2 machine, then it's not the end of the world. This is very similar, but this one got a little more, just a little more contrast to it. The fiber, I don't like the contrast as much. It does look nice. It's very crisp, but I'm not crazy about the contrast. And keep in mind, guys, oh, and I did one more with the Monport just to see if I could replicate that gold color. I did another one with the Monport. Brought the focus down, changed the settings, and did that. And I don't know if you can see. I'll try to get it where you can see really close. You can see that this stuff is very textured. Apparently we're having a cat fight. But this stuff is very textured, and it's very rough. Like, it's like sandpaper. So it was a very unique look, but I don't know that it's practical for what I was wanting to do. But I wanted to try to see if I could replicate it from the speed and power test, and I did. So there you go. All right, guys, this was a very short video for what I traditionally make. And the only real reason I did the video is because I have a lot of people asking me about different materials, different speed settings, which machine's better for doing what. There's that whole CO2 versus diode debate as far as what you can and can't do. To be honest with you, the power and speed that I can run on the diode to get the result that I got on the diode is about twice as fast as the power and speed that I ran on the CO2. Now, I could probably tweak with it, play around with it. I do have my machine limited to 75% output through the S value in Lightburn, but you saw a speed test, guys. The ASMR P1, I will be able to crank those out at about 300 millimeters per second. If I load several of those in there, the work area is bigger. I can load up to 6 to 9 coasters in there, run them all at the same time. I'm not constantly swapping out material. Whereas with the Monport, you know, I could probably get 3 in there safely. And I would have to swap out after 3. With the fiber, you can put multiples in the work area, but the way the fiber works from the center out, the further out you get, the less clarity you're going to get, and the more likely for distortion you're going to get with that larger 3-inch or so image. So my pick for slate is going to be the diodes, guys. And the ASMR, even though that's what I'm using right now, most all of these diodes, whether it's a 20 watt or a 30 watt or a 10 watt or a 5 watt, most all of them will have the same effect. You're just going to be at slower speeds, even at 100% output. The 30 watt, all it really does is afford you the ability to go faster and have the same effect that you would with a lesser diode going slower. So it's really all about time. The quality of the images, all 3 machines, neck to neck, depending on your preference as far as the color and contrast. But all 3 machines are acceptable using those power settings. And feel free to back up, pause, and you can pick your own setting from the little palettes that I showed you from the speed and power test. But guys, I had some work to do in the shop. I've been changing out fans. I've had some ventilation failures in my vacuum table. Had to get that fixed. So worked on this video last night. Come home this afternoon and been fixing that. But let me know if this kind of stuff is helpful to you. I do know several people have asked me, so that was what kind of got this video in my mind that I wanted to do it. At that, and I got a good deal at Michael's. Found some coasters on closeout. So I got like 6 packs of these guys for like $4 a pack. So it was a fairly economical video to make tonight. It also helps me moving forward and getting ready for Christmas. As you can see, I did go ahead and put Christmas themes on these so that I can actually sell them. And you guys don't have to worry about whether or not I lost money on the video. So that's the plan, is all but maybe my rough one. Maybe this one. This one may wind up. Brandy may like it. She may decide she wants it. But these 3, I think these 3 are good enough that they could be used. So I've got 4 of them done, and we'll be moving forward into Christmas. So if you want to know more about slate, guys, I know my buddy Steve over at Ventari's Workshop. He's got a video that he done where he did some testing on slate as well. And I'll drop a link down below to his video. You can go check out, see what he's got to say, some of the other things that you may want to look at. But with lasers, all these different mediums, guys, it's a never-ending learning curve to try to figure out what settings work best with which machine. So hope this helps, and till next time, be safe and have a good day.